Murder is afoot, and you need to solve it. The Hex starts as a simple little murder mystery, but if you're a fan of Daniel Mullins' previous game, Pony Island, you know that it's never simple, and there's way more than meets the eye. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're investigating murder in the Hex. The Hex's setup is boilerplate murder mystery. A dark, stormy night, a rundown inn far from society, 7 suspects, and an ominous message that one of them is plotting a murder. Your first twist is that each of the inn patrons all represent different gaming archetypes. You've got everything from Super Weasel Kid, your furry platformer mascot, to Lazarus, the space marine that stars in ultraviolet shooters. From there, you walk a mile in each suspect's shoes, learning who they are, what happened to their individual games, how they all ended up at the inn, and what their motivations might be to murder someone. Both narratively and mechanically, the game starts incredibly simple, covering the straightforward rise and fall of Super Weasel Kid's trilogy with some bare-bones platform gameplay. But both sides of the equation grow increasingly complex the further down the rabbit hole you go. Narratively, each vignette builds towards something bigger, characters start showing up in each other's games, and a few recurring antagonists are never far behind. And mechanically, the Hex flips through game types at a breakneck pace. You'll start by playing a fighter, then flip over to a turn-based tactics game, then something along the lines of Hotline Miami, and then a short little RPG, and then you'll even run through a quick spoof of something like the Beginner's Guide. Each little minigame is also radically different from its peers. Even if it isn't the deepest gameplay you'll ever experience, considering you'll only spend 20 to 30 minutes with each game type, it's actually a little remarkable how well fleshed out these segments are. For example, the fighting game portion isn't like a fully fleshed out fighting game, but it still carries over a lot of the same elements, with high, mid, and low attacks, guarding, a dash move, and some amusing meta commentary about balance patches. And then it throws in a twist for each enemy you face on top that gives each individual fight its own rhythm. And then after 20 minutes, you're done, and the mechanic gets put away before it becomes boring, only to make a surprise appearance again in a completely unrelated moment for a great gag that I won't spoil. Just as the Hex's narrative and gameplay rapidly compound in complexity and interest, so too does the overarching murder mystery. It becomes clear within the first 5 minutes that the hunt for the killer is mostly just a pretense. There's a murder mystery afoot alright, but it's merely a vehicle for a larger topic, namely the video game industry as a whole and how we as consumers interact with it. For lack of a better word, it explores and pokes fun of industry tropes. It's going to be difficult to say anything more about this game without spoiling anything, so if anything I've said so far has piqued your interest, close this video, play the game, and maybe come back and see if you enjoyed it as much as I did. I won't reveal any major plot points, but this is still a game best enjoyed going in blind. For everyone still here, let's dig a bit more into some themes. The Hex has this whole metatextual layer where every one of its games have an overarching and familiar narrative arc of their own. Like, one game gets cancelled, is eventually taken over by modders, but then they start getting cease and desists. Probably sounds familiar, right? But where this game really clicks is when it starts exploring the consequences of all those narrative arcs for the characters inside the games that are helpless against the whims of a publisher's boardroom politics. At its absolute core, the Hex is an exploration of just how awful being a video game character would be. But it doesn't do that by investigating the mental trauma that might crop up after murdering 1,000 Nazis in a weekend like you might expect. Instead, it asks, what happens if your game, your entire universe, gets sold to another company and they start changing it? How do you cope? What happens when you get selected to guest star in a game in a completely different genre, essentially forcibly transferred onto a new career track? How do you find a way to be happy anyway? What happens when modders get at your game, and the physical rules of your world can change at the whims of the player and the push of a button? What does that do to the mind, to live in a world like that, where everything is always changing around you and there are no constants to anchor you to reality? Do you find something else to cling to, or do you fail to cope and go insane? Yeah, this game gets dark. But on that note, it's time to ask a question of our own. What do you get out of 5 hours with the Hex? Well, that'll be enough to get you to the credits, actually. And the hex uses its brevity to great effect, both hitting the ground running almost immediately and constantly switching out game modes before any of them grow too dull. And it tells a genuinely engaging story, complete with some effective plot twists, a rare feat for a game with so little time to build up its narrative. So if you're paying attention from home, this is basically the exact game I set out to look for on this channel. It's short, unique, mechanically engaging, and narratively satisfying. That said, the hex probably isn't for everyone, as even if its mechanics are engaging, they're still pretty simple. The story is the main draw here, so if that doesn't grab you, the hex might not quite land for you. But for what they are, the mechanics are still pretty clever and extremely well executed, as well as everything else in the game. The hex nails exactly what it wants to be, and if anything I said has you interested, it'll probably nail you too. Hey, first of all, a big thank you to Daniel Mullins, who actually provided this channel's first ever advance review copy for free. That's a big milestone for me. And also, thank you everyone for watching this far. If you enjoyed what you saw, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you like games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. But regardless, I'll see you all next week.